The night I learned what evil looked like, it was wearing a $5,000 dress and smiling at a dying man. I was invisible then. I had been invisible my entire life, which is why I was standing in the corner of the hospital room holding a stack of fresh linens that no one had asked for, watching two women I did not yet know perform a grief so convincing that even the nurses wept. The man in the bed was Mr. Caruso, the Marchetti family's oldest advisor. 87 years old, cancer in his bones, hours left to live. I had been sent from the estate to deliver personal items from his room, a photograph of his late wife, a rosary his mother had given him, small comforts for his final journey. But when I arrived, I found I was not alone. Serena Bellini sat at his bedside, holding his weathered hand in both of hers. Her dark hair fell across her face like a veil, and her shoulders trembled with what appeared to be sobs. Victoria Ashford stood behind her, one elegant hand. Resting on Serena's shoulder, her expression a perfect portrait of sympathetic sorrow. "You were so important to her," Serena was saying. "Eleanor loved you like a father. She would want us to be here. She would want you to know that you are not alone." Mr. Caruso's eyes were clouded with morphine, but I saw him smile, saw his cracked lips form words I could not hear, saw him squeeze Serena's hand with what little strength remained. I stayed in the corner, unseen, unnoticed. I watched Serena lean close to whisper something in his ear. I watched Victoria produce a document from her handbag, watched her guide a pen into Mr. Caruso's trembling fingers. "Just a formality," Victoria murmured. "Something Eleanor asked us to handle before she passed. You remember, don't you? She wanted to make sure her charitable foundation was protected. This just ensures her wishes are honoured." Mr. Caruso signed. Of course he signed. He was dying, drugged, surrounded by women he believed had been his beloved Eleanor's closest friends. Why would he question them? I did not know what the document said. I did not understand what I had witnessed, but something cold settled in my chest as I watched them tuck the paper away, as I watched them resume their performance of grief, as I watched them hold his hands and weep until a nurse finally came to check his vitals and they slipped away. Mr. Caruso died 4 hours later. I learned his entire estate had been redirected to a foundation controlled by Serena Bellini and Victoria Ashford. $32 million stolen from a dying man with a forged signature and manufactured tears. But I did not learn this until much later. That night, I simply returned to the Marchetti estate with the linens I had never delivered, filed away what I had seen in the locked room in my mind, where I kept all the things I was not supposed to know, and went back to being invisible. My name is Iris Whitmore. I was 26 years old when this story began, and I had been cleaning other people's homes since I was 14. My mother died when I was 12, a fever that came fast and left nothing behind but a body I barely recognized. My father followed 3 years later, his heart giving out one morning while I was at school, leaving me nothing but his debts and a talent for disappearing into the background. I had worked in 11 houses before the Marchetti estate, and I had learned the essential truth of service in all of them. We exist to make the lives of the wealthy more comfortable, and the best way to do that is to never remind them we exist at all. I was good at this. Too good, perhaps. I had become so skilled at invisibility that sometimes I wondered if I had stopped existing altogether. I moved through rooms without making sound. I cleaned surfaces without leaving traces. I observed everything and revealed nothing, a ghost in a uniform, a pair of hands without a face. The Marchetti estate was the grandest house I had ever worked in. 47 rooms, 23 staff members, gardens that stretched to the horizon, and a family cemetery hidden in a grove of ancient oaks. The master of the house was a man named Dante Marchetti, and in 11 months of service, I had seen him exactly 3 times, always from a distance, always surrounded by men in dark suits who seemed to exist solely to keep the world away from him. They said he had been different before his wife died, before grief had hollowed him out and left behind only the cold machinery of power. They said he had laughed once, smiled once, loved once. But that man had been buried alongside Elena Marchetti 2 years ago, and the one who remained was something carved from winter. I did not mind. I had not come looking for warmth. I had come looking for survival, and the Marchetti estate offered that in abundance. Good wages, steady work, a roof over my head, and meals I did not have to scrounge. If the price was serving a ghost, I was willing to pay it. The two women were a different matter. Serena Bellini and Victoria Ashford visited the estate 3 times a week, sometimes more. They had been Elena's closest friends. This was the story everyone told, the history that explained their constant presence. They had grown up together in the glittering world of old money and older names. When Eleanor married Dante Marchetti, they had been her bridesmaids. When Eleanor fell ill, they had been at her bedside. When Eleanor died, they had been the ones to hold her widower upright at the funeral. Now they were helping him heal. That was what everyone believed. 2 loyal friends honouring the memory of the woman they had lost, guiding her grieving husband back toward the land of the living. Everyone believed this because Serena and Victoria were masters of their craft. I watched them work. In those early months before I understood what I was seeing, I watched them with the same detached curiosity I applied to everything in the house. They were fascinating in the way that beautiful, dangerous things are always fascinating. Every gesture was calibrated. Every word was chosen. Every smile, every tear, every moment of apparent vulnerability was a performance so polished that it had become indistinguishable from truth. I watched Serena spend an entire afternoon with Mrs. Patterson, the elderly cook who had been with the family for 40 years. Serena asked about her recipes, her childhood, her late husband. She remembered details from previous conversations. The name of Mrs. Patterson's cat, the date of her wedding anniversary, the medication she took for her arthritis. By the end of the afternoon, Mrs. Patterson was calling her dear and promising to make her favourite pastry. I watched Victoria cultivate Thomas, the head of security, a man who trusted no one and revealed nothing. Victoria discovered that his daughter was struggling to pay for university. She made a phone call. 2 days later, his daughter had a full scholarship to her first-choice school. Thomas never questioned where the scholarship came from. He simply became Victoria's man, ready to report anything she wanted to know. They were building an army. One kindness at a time, one secret at a time, one carefully constructed obligation at a time. They found everyone's weakness, financial troubles, family problems, hidden shames, desperate needs, and they solved just enough to create loyalty without raising suspicion. The staff adored them. Mrs. Tierney, the head housekeeper, treated them like family. The footmen competed to serve them. The gardeners saved the best flowers for their visits. Everyone loved Serena and Victoria because Serena and Victoria had made themselves essential to everyone. Everyone except me. I had no weakness they could exploit, no family they could help, no secrets they could leverage. I was too poor to bribe, too alone to threaten, too invisible to notice. I existed below their radar, a maid who scrubbed floors and said nothing, a ghost who moved through the house without leaving footprints. This would prove to be their mistake. The black card arrived on a Tuesday. I found the envelope on my cot when I returned from my shift, plain white, no name on the front. Inside was a card so black it seemed to absorb the light, and a note typed on thick cream paper. No limit. Spend freely. Return the card in 7 days. I stared at it for a long time. The card was heavy in my hand, heavier than any piece of plastic had a right to be. I did not understand why I had received it. I was a maid. I owned nothing. I was no one. Mrs. Tierney explained when I asked. 3 cards had been distributed. One to Miss Bellini, One to Miss Ashford. One to me. Mr. Marchetti's instructions. No explanation given. A test. It had to be a test. But a test of what? I thought about the card constantly over the following days. I heard the whispers about the other recipients. Miss Bellini had gone to the Diamond District, had returned with a necklace that cost more than I would earn in a decade. Miss Ashford had purchased a painting, a small masterpiece that now hung in her city apartment. Both women had spent freely, extravagantly, as if the cards were exactly what the notes had promised. I thought about what I could buy. New shoes. Mine had holes that I stuffed with newspaper when it rained. A warm coat. Books I could own instead of borrow. Small things that would make my small life slightly less hard. But something held me back. Some instinct I could not name. The card felt wrong in my hands, like a trap waiting to close. I decided to do nothing. I would keep the card for 7 days and return it unused, and perhaps Mr. Marchetti would forget I existed, which was exactly how I preferred things. On the 4th day, I was assigned to clean Mrs. Marchetti's room. I had not known this room existed. It was on the 3rd floor, at the end of a corridor that was always locked, in a wing where staff were not permitted. When Mrs. Tierney handed me the key, her face was blank, but something flickered in her eyes. Pity, perhaps, or warning. The room was a shrine. That was my first thought as I stepped inside. A shrine to a woman who had been dead for 2 years, but whose presence still filled every inch of space. The bed was made with pale blue linens, waiting for someone who would never return. A book lay open on the nightstand, a receipt marking a page she would never finish. Photographs covered every surface, a woman with dark hair and kind eyes, laughing, serious, tender, alive. Elena Marchetti had been beautiful, but it was not the cold beauty of Serena Bellini or the polished beauty of Victoria Ashford. It was something warmer than that, something that made you feel seen even through a photograph. She had the kind of face that invited trust, that promised safety, that made you believe the world might contain goodness after all. I cleaned the room slowly, reverently. I dusted, surfaces that were already spotless. I straightened objects that did not need straightening. I moved like a ghost, trying not to disturb the grief that had settled into every corner. On the vanity, I found a jewelry box. Inside was a gold locket, simple and elegant. I opened it without thinking, and inside was a photograph of a little girl. The girl had her mother's dark hair and her father's serious eyes. She could not have been more than 4 or 5 years old. I had not known there was a child. I closed the locket and placed it back exactly where I had found it, but as I turned to leave, something else caught my attention. A small calendar on the wall, 2 years out of date, turned to a month-long past. And there, circled in faded red ink, was a date. March 15th. I did not know what the date meant, but I carried it with me as I returned the key to Mrs. Tierney, as I went about my work, as I lay in my cot that night staring at the cracked ceiling. March 15th was 4 days. Away. The realization came slowly, then all at once. March 15th was the anniversary of Eleanor Marchetti's death. In 4 days, it would be 2 years since this house had lost its heart. And the cemetery on the edge of the estate, the family plot hidden in the grove of oaks, was a place no one ever visited anymore, not even her husband, not even her closest friends. I made my decision before dawn on March 15th. I retrieved the black card from beneath my mattress and walked into town, 3 miles in shoes that let the cold seep through. The florist was just opening when I arrived. I asked for white roses, a simple arrangement, nothing extravagant. The total came to $62. The walk back to the estate felt longer. The roses were heavy in my arms, and with every step I became more certain I was making a mistake. I was a maid. I had no right to visit the family cemetery. If anyone found out, I would be dismissed. But I kept walking. The gate to the cemetery was unlocked. I pushed it open and stepped inside, and the world went quiet. Eleanor's grave was easy to find. The marble was still white, the letters of her name still sharp. I knelt in the wet grass and placed the roses at the base of the headstone. I did not pray. I had stopped believing in prayers years ago. But I spoke to her, quietly, in the voice I used when I was alone. I did not know you, I said, but I have seen your room. I have seen the book you were reading, the photographs on your walls, the locket with your daughter's picture. Someone should have brought you flowers before now, someone who knew you, who loved you. But they did not come, so I came instead. I stayed for a long time, kneeling in the cold. When I finally stood to leave, my knees were stiff and my hands were numb. And he was there. Dante Marchetti stood at the edge of the cemetery, half hidden by the shadow of an ancient oak. He was not wearing a suit, just a dark coat over a simple shirt, his hands in his pockets. His face was carved from stone. He was watching me. I had never been this close to him. I had never seen his eyes, dark and deep and carrying a weight I could not fathom. I had never felt the force of his presence, the way the air seemed to thicken around him, the way my lungs forgot how to breathe. We stood there for a long moment. Neither of us spoke. The wind moved through the trees, scattering petals from the roses I had placed. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows without a word. I did not see him again for 3 weeks. The card was collected on the 7th day. A man in a grey suit came to the servants' quarters and held out his hand. I placed the black card in his palm, and he looked at me with an expression I could not read before walking away. I waited for consequences that never came. Days passed. Weeks. I continued my work, cleaning and scrubbing and polishing, and I tried not to think about the cemetery, but I could not stop noticing things. The way the staff looked at me differently now. The way Mrs. Tierney assigned me to increasingly sensitive tasks. The way whispers followed me through hallways. And I could not stop noticing Serena and Victoria. They visited more frequently now, sweeping through the house in clouds of expensive perfume, wearing their new diamonds like badges of honor. They laughed with the staff, complimented the cook, left generous tips that made everyone smile. But I had begun to see beneath the surface. It started with small observations. The way Serena's smile flickered off like a light switch when she thought no one was watching. The way Victoria's eyes went cold and calculating when she surveyed a room of valuable art. The way their questions about the estate's finances were framed as innocent curiosity, but always probed for specific numbers. Then I witnessed something I was not meant to see. I was cleaning the second-floor corridor late one evening when I heard voices from the library. The high door was not quite closed, and sound carried strangely in this old house. It was Serena and Victoria. But their voices were different than I had ever heard them. Hard, cold, stripped of all warmth. It is almost insulting how easy this has been. Serena laughed, and there was no music in it. 2 years of playing the grieving friend, and he still has not suspected a thing. He actually thanks us for visiting. Thanks us for keeping Elena's memory alive. The best part is watching him deteriorate, Victoria replied. Every time we mention her name, every time we bring up some tender memory, we twist the knife a little deeper. He will never recover. He will never move on. And the more broken he becomes, the easier he is to control. My blood turned cold. And the staff? Serena asked. Completely loyal. Victoria's voice was smug. Mrs. Patterson would lie to the police for me. Thomas would bury a body if I asked. We have spent 2 years building this network, and there is not a single person in this house who would betray us. What about the new maid? The one who brought flowers to the grave? There was a pause. Then Serena spoke, her voice dismissive. She is nothing. A mouse. She has no connections, no family, no leverage. She is exactly the kind of person who knows how to stay invisible and keep her mouth shut. She is not a threat. Good, Victoria said, because we are running out of time. The daughter is the key. Once we have guardianship of Sophia, we control her inheritance. If something happens to Dante before he changes his will, everything goes to a foundation we cannot touch. But if we are named Sophia's guardians and trustees, everything comes to us. Serena finished the sentence, but he keeps refusing to bring her home from that school. He will agree eventually. We just need to be patient. We have waited this long. We watched Eleanor die for 6 months, held her hand, wiped her tears, and she never suspected a thing. Neither did he. The admission hung in the air like poison. And if patience fails, Serena asked, then we find another way. Victoria's voice dropped to something soft and terrifying. We have done it before. We can do it again. I moved then, forcing my feet to carry me away, down the corridor, toward the servants' stairs. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. They had killed Elena. The 2 women who visited this house, who wore diamonds bought with Mr. Marchetti's money, who spoke her name with tears in their eyes. They had murdered their best friend and were now circling her widower, waiting for the right moment to strike again. And there was a child, a daughter named Sophia, hidden away at a boarding school, who stood between them and everything they wanted. I should have told someone. I should have run to Mrs. Tierney, to the security team, to anyone who might listen. But who would believe me? I was a maid. They were beloved friends of the family. I had no proof, no evidence, nothing but words I had overheard in a corridor. So I did what I had always done. I filed the knowledge away in the locked room in my mind. I continued my work. I watched and waited and gathered whatever scraps of information I could find. And I started to build a case. The library became my hunting ground. I cleaned it twice a week now, a task I had requested from Mrs. Tierney under the guise of being thorough. The room contained records dating back decades, old newspapers, society magazines, financial documents that should have been locked away but had been carelessly left in unlocked cabinets. I learned things, pieced together fragments, built a picture of Eleanor Marchetti that made her death even more tragic. She had been good, genuinely, impossibly good. She had founded a children's hospital in the city, funded scholarships for underprivileged students, opened her home to refugees and artists and anyone who needed shelter. She had been beloved not because she was beautiful or wealthy or powerful, but because she had used her beauty and wealth and power to help people who had nothing, and she had trusted her 2 closest friends with everything. I found photographs of Serena and Victoria in these records, standing beside Eleanor at charity galas, smiling for cameras at society events, always there, always present, always positioned just behind the woman who outshone them both. I studied their faces in those photographs. Serena's smile, too bright, too fixed. Victoria's eyes, calculating even then, the way they looked at Eleanor when they thought no one was watching. Not with love, but with something that might have been hunger. They had been planning this for years, maybe decades, waiting for the right moment, the right opportunity, the right weakness to exploit. Elena's illness had been that opportunity, and they had taken it. 8 weeks after the anniversary, I found the proof. I was cleaning Mr. Marchetti's study, a task that had been added to my duties without explanation. The room was usually locked, but Mrs. Tierney had given me a key and strict instructions: dust the surfaces, vacuum the carpet, touch nothing else. I was careful, methodical, but as I was dusting the desk, my elbow caught a stack of papers and sent them scattering. My heart stopped. I knelt to gather them, my hands trembling, and I saw the name. Elena. It was a report, an investigation, typed on official paper with stamps and signatures, conducted privately outside official channels. I knew I should not read it. I knew the cost of being caught. I read it anyway. The report detailed Elena's final months, her sudden illness, the symptoms that had baffled doctors, the specialists who could not explain why a healthy woman in her 30s was wasting away before their eyes. and it contained a conclusion that confirmed everything I had overheard. Poison. Eleanor Marchetti had been poisoned, slowly, methodically, over the course of several months, with a compound that mimicked natural disease. The investigation had traced the poison to her food, specifically to the special meals and teas prepared for her during her illness, by her closest friends. The report named 2 primary suspects, 2 women who had had unlimited access to Eleanor during her final months, 2 women who had brought her soup and tea and comfort while she died: Serena Bellini, Victoria Ashford. There was more. Financial records showing suspicious payments, communication intercepts revealing coded conversations, a timeline of events that painted a picture of premeditated murder so complete, so damning, that no jury in the world would fail to convict. But the report had never been filed with authorities. It had never been made public. It sat here, on Mr. Marchetti's desk, buried beneath other papers, as if he had read it, and then simply set it aside. He knew. He had known for months, maybe longer, and he had done nothing. I put the papers back exactly as I had found them. I finished cleaning the study with hands that would not stop shaking, and I understood something I had not understood before. Dante Marchetti was not ignoring his wife's murder. He was waiting, planning, building something that would destroy her killers so completely that they would never recover. He was playing a game I could not see, and Serena and Victoria were pieces on his board. But they were playing their own game too, and they were running out of patience. I witnessed this 3 days later. There was a new maid on staff, a young woman named Clara who had arrived the previous month. She was 19, pretty, eager to please. She had a younger brother with medical bills and a mother who could not work. Serena and Victoria had noticed her immediately. I watched them cultivate her the way they cultivated everyone. Victoria discovered the brother's illness and made sympathetic noises. Serena learned about the medical bills and casually mentioned a fund that might help. Within 2 weeks, Clara was receiving monthly payments from an anonymous benefactor. Enough to cover her brother's treatment, enough to bind her with chains of gratitude. Then they asked for something in return. I was cleaning the hallway outside the small sitting room when I heard them talking to Clara. The door was slightly open, and I could see Clara's face through the gap, pale, frightened, trapped. "It is a small thing," Serena was saying. Her voice was warm, understanding, motherly. "We just need you to tell us what Mr. Marchetti discusses in his private meetings, who visits him, what documents he keeps on his desk." "I cannot," Clara whispered. "I could lose my position. I could—" "Think about your brother." Victoria's voice was still gentle, but something sharp lurked beneath. "His treatment costs $8,000 a month. Without our help, your family would lose everything. We are not asking for much, just small pieces of information. Things you hear, things you see. Nothing that could hurt anyone. But if I am caught, you will not be caught." Serena smiled, and I watched Clara flinch. "We are very good at protecting the people who help us. And we are very good at punishing the people who do not." The threat hung in the air, delicate as poison. "Your brother's treatment could be terminated with a single phone call," Victoria said softly. "Your mother could lose her apartment. These things happen so easily, so quickly. One moment you have everything, and the next." She let the sentence trail off. Clara was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. She nodded, just once, a small broken movement. "Good girl." Serena patted her hand. "We knew you would understand." I moved away before they could see me. I found a supply closet and stood in the darkness, my hands pressed against my mouth to keep from screaming. This was what they were. Beneath the smiles and the kindness and the perfect performances. This was the truth of Serena Bellini and Victoria Ashford. They were monsters, and they were destroying everyone they touched. That night I made a decision that would change everything. I found Clara in the servants' quarters after dinner. She was sitting on her cot, staring at nothing, her face still streaked with dried tears. When she saw me, she flinched. "I know what they asked you to do," I said quietly. I sat down beside her, keeping my voice low. "And I know you feel like you have no choice, but I need you to listen to me." She looked at me with eyes that had gone dull with fear. "How do you know?" "Because I have been watching them. I have seen what they are. And I know things about them that they do not want anyone to know." I told her. Not everything. I could not risk putting that much information in the hands of someone they had already compromised. But enough. Enough to make her understand that the women she feared were not invincible. Enough to give her hope. "What do I do?" she asked when I finished. "You tell them what they want to hear," I said. "You give them small pieces of information. Things that do not matter. Things that will not hurt anyone. You make them believe you are loyal. And when the time comes, you help me bring them down." She stared at me for a long moment. Then something shifted in her face, a spark of something that might have been courage. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "You could ignore all of this. You could stay invisible." I thought about Elena's grave, the flowers I had placed there, the promise I had made without knowing I was making it. "Because someone has to," I said, "and I am the only one who can." The weeks that followed were the most dangerous of my life. I worked with Clara to feed Serena and Victoria carefully curated information, small things, meaningless things, details that seemed valuable but led nowhere. The two women believed they had a spy in the household, and their confidence grew. Meanwhile, I continued my own surveillance. I documented every manipulation, every threat, every carefully orchestrated cruelty. I noted the staff, members they had compromised, the leverage they held over each one, the web of obligation and fear they had constructed, and I looked for an opportunity to reach Mr. Marchetti. It came on a rain-soaked evening in late April. I had been assigned to serve at a private dinner, Mr. Marchetti and the two women, a small gathering in the formal dining room. I poured wine and cleared plates and kept my eyes down, invisible as always. But I listened. The conversation was tense. Serena and Victoria were pushing harder than I had ever heard them push, their voices honeyed but insistent. "You cannot keep her at that school forever," Victoria was saying. "Sophia needs to be home with family, with people who love her." "She is safe where she is," Mr. Marchetti replied. His voice was flat, revealing nothing. "Safe?" Serena's laugh was soft, musical, poisonous. "She is alone, Dante, isolated. A child needs connection, stability, love. She needs to know her father has not abandoned her. I have not abandoned her." "Then prove it." Victoria leaned forward, her eyes bright with something that looked like triumph. "Bring her home. Let us help you raise her. We promised Eleanor we would look after her daughter, and we intend to keep that promise." The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush stone. Then Mr. Marchetti spoke, and his voice was very quiet. "I will think about it." The two women exchanged a glance. A small smile played at the corners of Victoria's lips. "That is all we ask," Serena said sweetly. "Just think about it." The dinner ended shortly after. As I was clearing the last of the dishes, I made a decision. I waited until the two women had left, until the house had settled into its nighttime quiet. Then I went to the study. The door was closed, but I could see light beneath it. I knocked, softly, and waited. "Enter." I pushed open the door and stepped inside. Mr. Marchetti was standing by the window, a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring out at the rain. He did not turn when I entered. "I know who you are," he said. "The maid who brought flowers to my wife's grave." "Yes," I said. "You spent $62 on roses for a woman you had never met." He turned then, and his eyes met mine. "Why?" "Because she deserved to be remembered, because no one else was doing it, because it was the right thing to do." He studied me for a long moment. Then he gestured to the chair across from his desk. Sit. I sat. You have been watching Serena and Victoria, he said. You think I do not notice, but I notice everything in this house. I know you clean the library more often than necessary. I know you linger in hallways where you have no business being. I know you have been gathering information. My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice steady. Yes. Why? Because I know what they are, I said. Because I heard them admit they killed your wife. Because I found your report. Because I know they are planning something. And I think it involves your daughter. He went very still. What did you hear? I told him everything. The conversation in the library, the threats against Clara, the way they were building an army of compromised staff, the way they were pushing him to bring Sophia home. They want control of her, I said. They want to be named her guardians. If something happens to you, everything goes to them. He finished the sentence, his voice flat. I know. Why do you think I have kept her away? Then why do you let them into this house? I demanded. Why do you eat dinner with them, share information with them, pretend they are friends? You have evidence. You could destroy them tomorrow, because I want them destroyed completely. He set down his whiskey and moved to the desk, lowering himself into his chair. For the first time, I saw the exhaustion beneath his composure, the grief that never went away. These women are not ordinary criminals, he said. They are protected by powerful families. They have connections to judges, politicians, law enforcement. If I move against them, without absolute proof, without documentation so overwhelming that no one can dismiss it, they will escape. They will disappear into their networks of influence, and I will never get another chance. So you are waiting, I am building. He met my eyes. I am constructing a case so complete, so damning, that when I strike, there will be nowhere for them to hide. I am documenting every crime, every manipulation, every person they have hurt. And when I am finished, I will not just send them to prison. I will destroy their reputations, their families, their futures. I will make sure the world knows exactly what they are. And Sophia? Sophia stays safe. He said it firmly, but I heard the crack beneath the words. She stays at that school, protected until I can guarantee. They know about the school, I said. I heard them discussing it. They have been sending her letters, trying to establish a relationship, and they are getting impatient. He went very still. They talked about finding another way, I continued, if patience failed. I think they are planning something. I do not know what, but my daughter. His voice was barely a whisper. They are planning to take my daughter. Or worse, I said. I did not want to say it, but he needed to understand. They killed your wife because she was in their way. If Sophia becomes an obstacle too. He stood abruptly, turning away. I watched his shoulders shake with something that might have been rage or grief or both. I have failed her, he said. Elena. I promised to protect our family, and I have failed at every turn. No. I stood too, though I had not meant to. You have been fighting alone. You have been trying to protect everyone by yourself, but you do not have to do this alone anymore. He turned back to face me. What are you proposing? Let me help you, I said. I am invisible to them. I can go places you cannot, hear things you cannot, gather evidence you cannot reach. I have already started. I have documented their methods, their manipulations, the people they have compromised. You would be putting yourself in danger. I have nothing to lose. Everyone has something to lose. Then I would rather lose it fighting them than lose it hiding. We stared at each other across the desk. The rain streaked the windows behind him, and thunder rumbled in the distance. Why? He asked finally. You have no obligation to this family. You have no connection to my wife. Why risk yourself for people you do not know? I thought about the question. I thought about my invisible life, my invisible years, the way I had survived by never being seen. Because I saw her, I said. Your wife. Not just her grave or her room or her photographs. I saw who she was. I saw the hospital she built, and the scholarships she founded, and the way she opened her doors to anyone who needed shelter. I saw a woman who used her power to protect people who had none. I took a breath. I have been invisible my entire life. I have watched powerful people destroy powerless ones, and I have said nothing because silence was safer, because speaking up meant being seen, and being seen meant being vulnerable. But Eleanor was not silent. Eleanor stood up. Eleanor protected people even when it cost her. I met his eyes. I cannot be her, but I can try to be someone who deserves to have placed flowers on her grave. The silence stretched between us. Then, slowly, Dante Marchetti smiled. It was not warm. It was not soft. But it was real. "My wife would have liked you," he said. He held out his hand. "Will you help me bring them down?" I took his hand. Yes. The alliance changed everything. We met in secret, late at night, in rooms where we could not be overheard. He shared his evidence with me. Years of investigation, thousands of documents, a web of crimes that went far beyond Elena's murder. The forged signature at Mr. Caruso's deathbed. Embezzled funds from Elena's charitable foundation. Blackmail. Bribery. A trail of destruction that stretched back decades. Serena and Victoria had been doing this their entire lives. Eleanor was not their first victim. She was simply their most ambitious target. I shared what I had gathered, the list of compromised staff, the methods of manipulation, the cracks I had observed in their perfect facades. Together we began to weave a trap. Clara became our most valuable asset. She continued to feed the two women carefully crafted misinformation while reporting their reactions to me. Through her, we learned their timeline. They were planning to move soon. Something about a legal document, a change to Mr. Marchetti's will that would make everything easier. One night, after a particularly long session of reviewing evidence, Dante walked me back to the servants' quarters. It was late, nearly 2 in the morning, and the house was silent around us. We paused at the door to my wing. I should have said goodnight. I should have slipped inside and disappeared the way I always did, but something made me hesitate. "You should sleep," I said. "You look exhausted. Sleep does not come easily anymore." He was looking at me with an expression I could not read. "It has not since Eleanor died. I know. I have seen the light under your study door at 3 in the morning. I have seen the whiskey glasses that appear and disappear." He almost smiled. "You see everything. I see what I am not supposed to see. It is a curse as much as a gift." We stood there in the dim corridor, neither of us moving. The space between us felt charged with something I could not name. "Why did you really come to the cemetery that day?" he asked suddenly. "You could have placed the flowers and left before I saw you. You lingered. I did not know you were there. That is not what I asked. I thought about lying. I thought about deflecting, the way I had deflected every personal question for my entire life. But something about the darkness, about the late hour, about the way he was looking at me made honesty feel inevitable. I wanted to understand. "Her," I said quietly. "Eleanor." I had seen her room, her photographs, the evidence of who she had been. But I wanted to understand what it felt like to be loved by her, to be worthy of being remembered. "And did you?" "No." I met his eyes. But I understood something else. I understood what it felt like to be forgotten, to be invisible even in death. And I could not bear the thought of her feeling that way. He did not respond, but something shifted in his expression. A softening, a crack in the armor he wore so carefully. "You are not invisible," he said finally. "Not to me. Not anymore." Then he turned and walked away, and I stood in the corridor for a long time, my heart pounding for reasons I did not want to examine. We did not speak of that moment again. But something had changed between us. Some barrier had fallen. And in the weeks that followed, I felt it in every interaction. The way his eyes found me across a crowded room. The way his voice softened when he spoke my name. The way he started finding reasons to be wherever I was. I told myself it meant nothing. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself that a man like Dante Marchetti would never look at a maid the way I sometimes caught him looking at me. But I could not stop the warmth that spread through my chest whenever he was near. Could not stop the way my pulse quickened when our hands accidentally touched. Could not stop the dreams that came at night, dreams I refused to remember in the morning. We need to bring Sophia home, I told him one night, forcing my mind back to the task at hand. If they cannot use her against you, their entire plan falls apart. It is dangerous. His jaw was tight. If they suspect, they will suspect more if you keep refusing. I leaned forward. Bring her home. Let them think they have won, and then use their overconfidence against them. He was silent for a long time. Then he nodded. Sophia arrived 3 days later. I was not there when the car pulled up to the estate. I was preparing her room, making sure everything was perfect. Fresh flowers on the nightstand. Her mother's locket, retrieved from the room upstairs, placed gently on the pillow. Books I thought she might like, arranged on the shelves. But I watched from the window as a small figure emerged from the car, dark hair catching the light, serious eyes scanning an unfamiliar landscape. I watched her father step forward, hesitant. I watched her look up at him. This man, she had been told, did not want her. And I watched her run to him, watched her arms wrap around his legs, watched him lift her and hold her close, his face buried in her hair. I turned away. Some moments are too sacred to observe. The days that followed were difficult. Sophia was 7 years old, and she carried wounds that no child should carry. She flinched at loud noises. She ate too quickly, as if afraid her food would be taken. She checked locked doors obsessively before she could sleep, but she let me sit with her, let me read to her at night. Let me brush her hair and answer her questions about the house, about the servants, about the mother she barely remembered. One afternoon I found her in the garden, sitting beneath a rose bush, with her knees drawn to her chest. "Are you hiding?" I asked, settling onto the grass beside her. She shook her head, thinking. About what? About whether this is real. She did not look at me. At school I dreamed about coming home. I dreamed about my father wanting me, but dreams end. What if I wake up? I reached out and took her hand. "Do you feel this?" She nodded. Dreams do not feel like this. Dreams do not have grass stains on their knees or dirt under their fingernails. I squeezed gently. "This is real, Sophia. Your father loves you. He always loved you. He sent you away to protect you, not because he did not want you. Protect me from what?" I hesitated, but she deserved truth, even if it was difficult. From people who wanted to hurt you, bad people who pretended to be good. But your father has been fighting them, and soon they will not be able to hurt anyone ever again. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at me with eyes that were far too old for 7. "Are you one of the good ones?" she asked. "I want to be," I said honestly. She studied my face. Then, slowly, she leaned against my shoulder. "I think you are," she said. We sat there together until the sun began to set, and something in my chest that had been frozen for years began to thaw. She drew pictures sometimes. A woman with dark hair and a kind smile, surrounded by flowers. I never asked about these drawings. I simply kept them safe. "Did you know my mother?" she asked one evening as I was brushing her hair before bed. "No," I said, "but I have seen photographs of her. She was very beautiful." "Everyone says that." Sophia's voice was flat. "They say she was beautiful and kind and perfect, but I do not remember her. I only remember being sent away." I chose my words carefully. "Your father sent you away because he wanted to protect you. There were people who might have hurt you if you had stayed." "The ladies?" Sophia asked. I went still. "What ladies?" "The ones who write me letters." Sophia was not looking at me. She was staring at her reflection in the mirror, her small face serious. "They say they were my mother's friends. They say they want to take care of me. They say my father does not really love me. My blood ran cold. What else do they say? They say I should trust them. They say when they become my new mothers, everything will be better. Sophia's voice dropped to a whisper, but I do not like them. They smile too much, like they are wearing masks. I pulled her close, holding her tight. You are very smart, I said, and very brave, and you should trust your instincts about people. Will you protect me? She asked, her voice small against my shoulder. I thought about Eleanor, about the promise I had made at her grave without knowing I was making it. Yes, I said, I will protect you, Serena and... Victoria came to the estate the day after Sophia's arrival. They swept in with gifts and smiles, cooing over the child, exclaiming how much she had grown, how beautiful she was, how much she looked like her dear mother. They had brought dolls and dresses and promises of trips to the city, their voices dripping with sweetness. Sophia hid behind my legs and would not come out. I watched Serena's smile flicker, just for a moment. Watched Victoria's eyes go hard before she smoothed her expression back to warmth. She is shy, Serena said to Dante, her voice carefully sad. It has been so long since she has had proper family around her. Give her time. Of course, Dante replied. His face revealed nothing. They stayed for dinner. They complimented the food, charmed the staff, played the role of devoted family friends with practiced ease. But I watched them watching Sophia. I saw the calculation in their eyes, the frustration they were barely suppressing. They had expected the child to embrace them. They had spent months cultivating her through letters, building a relationship they could exploit. But Sophia had seen through them, the way children sometimes see what adults miss. She knew what they were. She just did not have words for it yet. After dinner, I found Serena in the hallway outside Sophia's room. She did not see me. She was standing at the door, her hand on the knob, her head tilted as if listening for sounds inside. I stepped out of the shadows. May I help you, Miss Bellini? She spun, and for just a moment the mask slipped. Her eyes went cold, her lips curled, her entire face transformed into something predatory. Then the mask returned. I was just checking on Sophia, she said sweetly, making sure she is settling in. Miss Sophia is sleeping, I replied. I will let Mr. Marchetti know you are concerned. We stood there facing each other in the dim hallway. Something passed between us. A recognition. A challenge. She knew I was not what I appeared, and I knew she knew. You are the maid who brought flowers to Elena's grave, Serena said softly. The one who spent $62. Yes. Why? Because she deserved to be remembered. Serena smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression I had ever seen. How sweet, she said. How absolutely sweet. She stepped closer, and her voice dropped to a whisper. Let me give you some advice, little maid. The people who remember too much in this house tend to have accidents. Elena remembered too much. She noticed things she should not have noticed, asked questions she should not have asked. And look where she ended up. She reached out and touched my cheek, a mockery of tenderness. Stay invisible, stay silent, stay alive. Then she walked away, her heels clicking on the marble. I watched her go, my heart pounding, but I did not run. I did not hide. I smiled, because she had just made a mistake. She had threatened me directly, revealed her true face, shown me exactly what she was capable of, and she had no idea that I was recording every word. The trap closed 3 weeks later. Dante had worked tirelessly, coordinating with prosecutors and investigators who had been waiting for years for exactly this kind of case. Every piece of evidence had been verified, every witness had been secured, every escape route had been blocked. Serena and Victoria were invited to the estate for a celebration. A new addition to the family, Dante called it. A formal announcement that he had decided to remarry. They came eagerly, triumphantly, dressed in their finest gowns, wearing the diamonds they had bought with his money. They believed the announcement was about one of them. They had spent 2 years positioning themselves for exactly this moment. The formal sitting room was filled with people they did not recognize. Men in dark suits standing along the walls. a woman with a briefcase sitting in the corner. The air itself felt different, charged with something electric and dangerous. Dante stood by the fireplace, his face unreadable. I stood beside Sophia, holding her hand, keeping her calm. "Thank you all for coming," Dante said. His voice was quiet, but it carried. "I have an announcement to make," Serena smiled, her hand drifting to her hair. Victoria leaned forward, anticipation gleaming in her eyes. 2 years ago, my wife Elena was murdered. The smile froze on Serena's face. "She was poisoned," Dante continued, slowly, methodically over the course of several months, by 2 women she trusted with her life. 2 women who sat at her bedside and held her hand while she died. 2 women who are in this room right now. Victoria went pale. "No," she said. "Dante, what are you—" "I have evidence," Dante said, cutting her off. 2 years of investigation, financial records, communication intercepts, witness testimony. Enough to prove beyond any reasonable doubt that Serena Bellini and Victoria Ashford murdered my wife." The men in dark suits moved, not toward the 2 women, not yet, but into positions that blocked every exit. I watched Serena's face transform, the mask shattered completely, revealing something ugly and desperate beneath. "You cannot prove anything," she spat. "We are protected. We have connections. No prosecutor in this city would dare." The woman with the briefcase stood. "I am Sarah Chen," she said, "federal prosecutor. I have been building this case for 18 months, with Mr. Marchetti's full cooperation. The charges include murder, fraud, extortion, and conspiracy. You are both under arrest." Victoria broke first. She lunged for the door, but 2 men caught her arms before she made it 3 steps. She screamed, actually screamed, the sound tearing through the room like breaking glass. "You cannot do this! You cannot— Do you know who my family is? Do you know—" "Your family has been notified," Sarah Chen said calmly. "They have declined to assist in your defense." Victoria went limp, all the fight draining out of her at once, but Serena did not give up. She turned to Dante, and her face twisted into something that might have been rage or might have been desperation. "You loved me," she said. "I know you did. I saw the way you looked at me. I was everything Eleanor was not. Stronger, smarter, more suited to your world. We could have been—" "I never loved you." Dante's voice was ice. "I tolerated your presence because I needed to gather evidence. Every dinner, every conversation, every moment you spent in this house was observed, recorded, documented. You were never a guest here. You were a prisoner who did not know she was in a cage." Serena's face contorted. Then her eyes found me. "You," she hissed, "the little maid. You did this, you—" She lunged at me, but Sophia stepped forward before anyone could stop her, planted herself between us, and looked up at Serena with eyes that blazed with 7 years of accumulated hurt. "My mother was good," Sophia said. Her voice was small but steady. "She was kind and beautiful, and she loved me. You killed her. You killed her, and you tried to take me, and you wrote me letters full of lies." She took a breath. "You are nothing. You are less than nothing. And I am glad you are going away forever." Serena stared at this child who should have been easy to manipulate, who should have been her ticket to everything she wanted. Then the men in suits took her arms and led her away. The room emptied slowly. Prosecutors gathered documents. Investigators conferred in corners. The machinery of justice ground into motion, slow but inexorable. I stood by the window, watching the cars pull away, carrying 2 murderers to their fate. Dante appeared beside me. "It is over," he said. "Is it?" I asked. "It does not feel over. It feels like the beginning of something." He was quiet for a moment. Then he turned to face me. "These past months," he said slowly, "working with you, trusting you, watching you with my daughter. I have felt things I did not think I was capable of feeling anymore, things I thought died with Elena. My heart was pounding." "Dante." I am not asking you to replace her, he said quickly. No one could do that. She was my first love, the mother of my child, and I will carry her with me until I die. But I have learned something these past months. I have learned that the heart is not a finite thing. It can hold more than one love, more than one loss, more than one hope. He reached out and took my hands in his. You brought flowers to my wife's grave when no one else remembered. You protected my daughter when I could not. You stood beside me in the darkness and helped me find my way back to the light. His voice dropped. I am not asking you to be Eleanor. I am asking you to be Iris. To stay here, not as a maid, not as staff, but as someone I need. Someone I... He paused, and for the first time since I had known him, Dante Marchetti looked uncertain. Someone I love, he finished quietly. If you will have me. I thought about my invisible life, my invisible years, the way I had survived by never being seen, never hoping, never reaching for anything more than survival. And I thought about $62 worth of roses on a grave, about a promise I had made without knowing I was making it, about a little girl who needed protection, and a man who needed healing, and a family that had been broken, and was slowly, carefully, piecing itself back together. Yes, I said. And when he kissed me, soft and gentle and full of promise, I felt the last frozen piece of my heart begin to thaw. The wedding was small, just us, Sophia, and a handful of people Dante trusted with his life. We stood in the garden where I had first watched Sophia chase butterflies, and we made promises that felt too big and too fragile and too perfect for words. I wore a simple dress, he wore a simple suit, and Sophia stood between us holding both our hands, beaming like the sun. Afterward, she tugged at my sleeve. Do I call you Mama now? She asked. I knelt down to her level. You can call me whatever feels right, I said. I'm not trying to replace your mother. No one could do that. But I will love you and protect you and be here for you no matter what you call me. She thought about this. Then she nodded. Iris, she said. For now. But maybe Mama later. When it feels right. When it feels right, I agreed. We visit Elena's grave together now, all three of us. We bring white roses and sit in the grass and tell Sophia stories about the mother she is learning to remember. Sometimes Sophia draws pictures of all of us together, her mother in heaven, watching over a family that has grown and changed and healed. I keep every drawing. They are precious to me in ways I cannot explain. The women who tried to destroy this family are gone. They were convicted on all charges. They will spend the rest of their lives in prison, stripped of their money, their connections, their power. Their names have become synonymous with evil. Their families have disowned them. Their legacy is nothing but ash. It is not enough. Nothing will ever be enough to bring Elena back, to undo the years of pain and manipulation, to heal the wounds they inflicted on everyone they touched. But it is justice. And justice, I have learned, is sometimes all we can hope for. I am Iris Marchetti now, wife and mother and protector, someone who saw what others ignored, someone who spoke when others stayed silent, someone who spent $62 on flowers for a stranger and found a family. Every year on March 15th, I wake before dawn. I walk to the florist in town, the same one I visited all those years ago. I buy white roses, always white roses, and I carry them to the cemetery at the edge of the estate. I kneel at Elena's grave, just as I did that first morning, and I tell her about her daughter, about the woman Sophia is becoming, about the way she laughs, the way she paints, the way she has her mother's kindness and her father's strength. I tell her about Dante, about the way he is healed slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. About the way he still keeps her photograph in a locked drawer, still reads from the book she never finished, still loves her in all the ways that matter. And I tell her about myself, About the invisible maid who became visible, about the woman who had nothing and found everything, about the life I never imagined and the family I never expected. I do not know if she can hear me. I do not know if there is anything after death, any consciousness that persists, any soul that watches over the people left behind. But I like to think she knows. I like to think she sees Sophia growing up happy and healthy, surrounded by love. I like to think she sees Dante learning to smile again, learning to hope again, learning to live again. I like to think she sees me, kneeling at her grave with roses in my arms, and knows that her memory is cherished, that her legacy lives on, that she is not forgotten, that someone, finally, is bringing her flowers. The sun rises over the Marchetti estate, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. I stand brushing grass from my knees and turn toward home. Dante is waiting for me on the path, Sophia holding his hand. They have brought a thermos of coffee and a basket of pastries, and Sophia is already chattering about her plans for the day. I walk toward them, toward this family I never expected, toward this life I never imagined. And I think about roses, about how they bloom in impossible conditions, survive winters that should kill them, find light in the darkest gardens. About how the most beautiful things often grow from the most unlikely places. About how love, real love, the kind that endures, sometimes begins with $62 and a grave and a promise made without words. I reach my family and Sophia throws her arms around my waist and Dante kisses my forehead and we walk back to the house together. And I am not invisible anymore. I am home.